The night manager's face still haunts me. Not the way it looked when he hired me, but how it appeared that final night, stretched and distorted like his skin was trying to escape. Sometimes I wake up at 3:17 a.m. exactly, the same time I found him hanging from the steel rafters above the seasonal section, his body swaying between the Christmas decorations. His mouth had been sewn shut. The thread matched the red of the Costco employee vest. 3 months have passed since I escaped Costco number 487 in Ankeny, Iowa. I never thought I'd end up in a small town 30 minutes north of Des Moines. But after my divorce and layoff in Minneapolis, the assistant manager position seemed like a fresh start. What a fucking joke. The job listing had warned about unique operational procedures. Should have known something was off when they hired me on the spot, desperate to fill the night shift vacancy after the previous manager's sudden relocation. Now I'm in a cramped studio apartment in Iowa City, as far from Ankeny as my meager savings could get me. I've tried telling people what happened there, tried explaining to the police about the rules, the things that wandered the aisles after midnight, the missing employees whose names disappeared from schedules like they never existed. No one believes me. And why would they? Costco is just a warehouse store. Bulk paper towels, free samples, happy families stocking pantries, but Costco number 487 is different. My phone buzzes, vibrating across the nightstand. I know who it is before checking. Sarah, the only other employee who made it out. The call connects before I realize I've answered. They found Danny, she says, voice cracking. Danny was a college kid from Iowa State who worked weekends in electronics. Nice guy. Always followed the rules, until the night he didn't. Where? My throat feels like sandpaper. Jordan Creek. Some teenagers spotted his Costco badge floating in the water. A pause. Mike, there's something else. His employee ID, the barcode's changed. It's not numbers anymore. The familiar dread coils in my stomach. Did you look at it? No. Her answer comes quickly. She knows better. We both learned rule number 12 the hard way. Never scan an ID badge found outside the store. I glance at the notebook on my desk, edges charred from when I'd tried burning it. The rules inside had remained untouched by the flames, the ink glistening like fresh blood. 17 rules for surviving the night shift at Costco, number 487. They're hiring again, Sarah whispers. 2 night positions. The Facebook page says they're desperate to fill them. Let some other poor bastards take the job, I say. But even as the words leave my mouth, I'm staring at the scars circling my wrists. The marks left by what lurks in the space between the frozen food sections after midnight. Mike, my sister just applied there. She needs the money for college, and I can't tell her why she shouldn't take it. She already thinks I had some kind of breakdown. The weight of her words sinks in. Someone else's family member, someone innocent. Okay, I hear myself say. I'll go back. One last time. I hang up and pull out the notebook. The first rule stares back at me in my own handwriting, more desperate with each entry as I discovered them one by one. Rule number 1. The store closes to customers at 8:30 p.m. All employees must be out by 9 p.m., except night shift. If you are night shift and see anyone in regular clothes after 9:15 p.m., they are not a customer. Do not acknowledge them. Do not ask them to leave. I never should have taken that job at Costco number 487. But now I'm going back. God help me, I'm going back. Hello, viewers. If you wish your stories or experiences to be narrated by me, share them on our own subreddit, which you can join from the description below. I will pick the stories from the community and narrate them, and every once in a while, we will host a 3-hour story compilation. My first night at Costco number 487 started like any normal orientation. The store manager, Kevin Aldridge, a heavy-set man with perpetually damp palms, gave me the standard tour during regular hours. Nothing seemed off as families pushed oversized carts through the warehouse, loading up on 40 packs of toilet paper and rotisserie chickens. "You're a godsend, Mike," Kevin said, clapping my shoulder as we stood by the tire center. "Night management positions are hard to fill these days." Lucky timing, I guess. I smiled, thinking about my empty bank account. Very lucky. Something flickered across Kevin's face. Relief, maybe, or guilt. "Just follow the procedures, and you'll do great." We finished the tour at 8 p.m. as the closing announcements began. Kevin led me to the break room, where 5 other employees sat waiting. The night crew. This is Beth from bakery, Carlos from maintenance, Tina from front end, Marco from receiving, and Sarah from merchandise. Kevin introduced rapidly. "Team, this is Mike, your new night assistant manager." They nodded, but remained oddly silent. Sarah, blonde, maybe mid-20s, glanced at her watch, then shot a look at Kevin. "Right, I should head out," Kevin said, checking his own watch anxiously. "Mike, Beth will get you settled." He hurried toward the exit, movements jerky and rushed. As the final customers filtered out and day staff clocked off, an unnatural quiet settled over the warehouse. Beth approached me with a clipboard. "First things first," she said, voice barely audible. "The rules." "The what?" "The special procedures for this location." She handed me the clipboard. "Read them now. Memorize them." The first page held a typed list labeled Night Shift Protocols, Store Number 487. My eyes scanned the first entries. Rule number 1. The store closes to customers at 8:30 p.m. All employees must be out by 9 p.m., except night shift. If you are night shift and see anyone in regular clothes after 9:15 p.m., they are not a customer. Do not acknowledge them. Do not ask them to leave. Rule number 2. The PA system will not be used after 10 p.m. If you hear announcements after this time, do not respond, regardless of what is said or whose voice you hear. Rule number 3. The bakery lights must remain on all night. If they turn off by themselves, exit the area immediately and wait 15 minutes before returning. Rule number 4. When restocking aisles 14 to 18, always work in pairs. Never turn your back on your partner, but do not stare at them continuously either. Rule number 5. If you notice an aisle that doesn't match the store layout, do not enter it. Report it to the night manager, then avoid looking at it for the remainder of your shift. I looked up at Beth, waiting for the punchline. Is this a prank? Some kind of hazing ritual? I wish. She checked her watch again. It's 8:47. We have 13 minutes to get in position. In position for what? Rule number 6. She pointed to the clipboard. Night crew must be at their designated stations before 9 p.m. Remain there until 9:17 p.m. no matter what you hear. The rest of the crew was already dispersing to different sections of the store. Sarah lingered, giving me a sympathetic look. Kevin didn't tell you anything, did he? She asked. About these rules? No. She sighed. They never do. Look, just follow the list tonight. Tomorrow I'll explain what I can. She glanced at the large wall clock. Your station is the manager's office. Go there now, close the door, and don't open it until 9:17 no matter what you hear. And Mike, don't look out the window. My feet carried me to the office as a sense of unease crept up my spine. I tried calling Kevin once I locked the door, but there was no signal. The fluorescent light above me flickered erratically. At exactly 9 p.m., all the main floor lights shut off. Through the office window blinds, I could see only the dim emergency lights illuminating the vast warehouse floor. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, heavy and dragging, like someone hauling a weight across the concrete floor. They circled the entire perimeter of the store, growing louder as they approached the office. Then the PA system crackled to life. "Michael Harrison, please report to the customer service desk," announced a voice that sounded like Kevin's, but distorted, as if speaking underwater. "Michael, your wife is here to see you." My ex-wife lived in Minneapolis. There was no way she was in an Ankeny Costco at 9 p.m. I remembered rule number 2 and stayed put, though every instinct told me to respond. "Michael," the voice came again, now sounding exactly like my ex-wife. "Please come out. I made a mistake. I want to come home." The doorknob to the office rattled violently. Something scratched at the door, fingernails or claws scraping against metal. "Open the door, Michael. I need help. I'm bleeding." I bit my lip until I'd tasted blood, forcing myself to remain silent. The scratching intensified, then abruptly stopped. My phone displayed 9:17 p.m. The overhead lights flickered back on as if nothing had happened. I cautiously opened the door to find Sarah waiting. "You didn't answer it." "Good," she said, visibly relieved. "Some don't make it past the first night." "What the hell is going on here?" My voice shook. "We don't know exactly. It started about 8 months ago, after they found something during the foundation excavation for the new freezer section." She lowered her voice. "But listen, there are more rules that aren't on that list. Ones we've figured out ourselves. Rule number 1, don't quit unless you're leaving Iowa for good. Those who stay nearby." She trailed off. "What happens to them?" "Let's just say they get promoted to customer. Permanently." She nodded toward the main floor. "Come on. We have work to do, and it's safer if we stick together. We need to finish stocking before midnight." "Why? What happens at midnight?" Sarah's eyes darted toward the bakery, where Beth was frantically checking the light fixtures. "That's when they start moving things around," she whispered. "Shelves, products, sometimes entire aisles. And if you get caught in one when it moves." She pulled up her sleeve, revealing a scar that looked like a perfect barcode burned into her flesh. "You don't want to find out." That was my first night at Costco number 487. I had 16 more rules to learn, some written down, others passed in whispers between terrified employees. Rules that would keep me alive, at least until I broke one. The rest of that first night blurred together in a haze of stocking shelves and avoiding eye contact with shadows that seemed to move independently of their owners. I helped Carlos reorganize the snack aisle, careful to follow rule number 4 about never turning my back on him, but not staring too long either. My skin crawled each time I caught him watching me in my peripheral vision. "You'll get used to it," he said around 11 p.m., breaking our uneasy silence. The feeling of being watched. "Does it ever go away?" I asked, arranging boxes of granola bars with mechanical precision. "No." He grimaced. "But you learn to tell the difference between when it's just another employee watching you and when it's something else." I wanted to ask what he meant by something else, but the overhead lights flickered 3 times in rapid succession. Carlos froze, his face draining of color. "What?" I started to ask. "Quiet," he hissed. "Don't move. Don't speak. Rule 17. We stood perfectly still among the snack foods as the temperature dropped so rapidly I could see our breath fog in the air. A low humming sound filled the aisle, like the drone of a massive refrigerator, but with an irregular rhythm that reminded me of breathing. Something moved at the far end of the aisle, a dark shape, roughly human-sized but wrong somehow. It appeared to glide rather than walk, its edges blurring as if it couldn't quite maintain its form. The shape paused midway down the aisle. Though it had no discernible face, I felt it studying us. Every instinct screamed at me to run. but Carlos's rigid posture kept me rooted in place. After what felt like an eternity, the shape continued past us and vanished around the corner. The temperature slowly returned to normal. "What the hell was that?" I whispered once Carlos visibly relaxed. "That," he said quietly, "is why we have rule number 8. If the temperature drops suddenly, remain still until it passes. Never attempt to communicate with it. And if someone does..." His expression darkened. "We lost a guy from produce last month. Thought he'd try talking to it." Carlos rubbed his hands together nervously. "They found his Costco badge inside a package of ground beef the next day. Just the badge." At midnight, a strange transformation came over the store. I was helping Sarah in the clothing section when the overhead lights dimmed slightly. A subtle vibration ran through the concrete floor, like the idling engine of a massive machine. "It started," Sarah whispered, checking her watch. "Midnight to 3 a.m. That's when the store changes." "Changes how?" She motioned for me to follow her up to the elevated office overlooking the warehouse floor. From this vantage point, I could see the entire store layout. "Watch," she said, pointing toward the far wall. "The seasonal section." At first, I saw nothing unusual, just the Halloween displays that had been set up earlier that week. Then I noticed a subtle shift. The entire section was rotating, slowly and imperceptibly, like the minute hand of a clock. The shelves, products, even the floor tiles moved as one cohesive unit. "That's impossible," I muttered. "Welcome to Costco," Sarah replied grimly, "where the impossible happens every night." As we watched, other sections began to move. Pharmacy sliding 10 feet to the left, furniture reversing its orientation, a new aisle appearing between electronics and appliances. "How does no one notice this during the day?" I asked. "By 6 a.m., everything's back where it should be," Sarah explained. "Mostly. Sometimes things get left behind or moved permanently. That's why we have rule number 9. Note any layout changes before leaving your shift. What looks wrong at night might be normal by morning." She turned to face me directly. "There are rules not on your list, Mike. Ones we've learned the hard way. Like rule number 17 about not moving when the temperature drops." She nodded. "And others. Never enter the walk-in freezer alone. Don't respond if you hear someone crying in the restrooms after 2 a.m. If you find a product with a barcode that begins with 7 zeros, don't scan it and don't put it on the shelves." "Jesus," I breathed. "How long has this been happening?" "About 8 months, shortly after they expanded the store." She hesitated. "There's a rumor they found something during the excavation, something old. The construction crew quit suddenly, and corporate brought in replacements from out of state to finish the job." A crackling noise from the PA system interrupted her. Though no announcement came through, we both tensed. "Come on," Sarah said. "We should get back to work. Standing in one place too long after midnight isn't safe." Around 2 a.m., I encountered rule number 10 firsthand in the dairy section. I was checking inventory when I noticed a gallon of milk placed on the floor in the middle of the aisle. As I approached to pick it up, Tina appeared from around the corner and grabbed my arm. "Don't touch it," she warned. "Rule number 10. If you find products arranged in patterns or placed where they shouldn't be, leave them alone." I looked closer and realized there were 4 more gallons arranged in a pentagon around the first one. "What happens if you move them?" "Remember Marcus from electronics?" She gave me a meaningful look. "The college kid?" I recalled Sarah mentioning him earlier. "Yeah, he rearranged some items he found in a circle. Said it was probably just kids messing around before closing." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That night, the security cameras caught him walking into the bathroom at 3:33 a.m. He never came out. When we reviewed the footage, the timestamp jumped from 3:33 to 5:17, and the bathroom was empty. Was he found? His name tag was. She swallowed hard. It was inside a sealed container of laundry detergent. The plastic was unbroken, but his tag was inside. We gave the milk a wide berth and continued our inventory. The night progressed with mechanical monotony, interrupted by moments of surreal terror. At one point, we heard what sounded like children laughing in the toy section, though no children should have been in the store. Rule number 11, Beth explained when I mentioned it. If you hear children playing, singing, or laughing, do not investigate the sound. By 4 a.m., the slow rearrangement of the store sections had stopped. Sarah found me in the office, updating inventory logs with shaking hands. "You made it through the worst part," she said, collapsing into a chair. 5 to 6 a.m. is usually quiet. Things settle down before the morning crew arrives. "How do you cope with this every night?" I asked. "You either adapt or you quit." She rubbed her eyes. "Most quit. The ones who stay in town after quitting. They don't last long." "What does that mean?" "It means Costco number 487 doesn't like loose ends." She leaned forward. "Listen, Mike, there's something else you should know. Every month, usually during the full moon, one of the rules changes, or a new one appears on the list. We never know which one until someone breaks it." "Who's making these rules?" I demanded. "We don't know." Sarah's eyes darted to the window overlooking the warehouse floor. "But sometimes after 3 a.m., you can see someone in the manager's vest walking the aisles. Someone who doesn't work here." She stood abruptly. "I should go. Morning shift starts arriving at 6. Remember rule number 13. Never discuss the night shift rules with day employees. They don't know, and they shouldn't." As dawn approached and the warehouse slowly returned to its daytime configuration, I found myself drawn to the newly constructed freezer section Sarah had mentioned earlier. Standing before the massive steel door, I felt a strange pull, like the building itself was breathing, pulsing with something alive and aware. I reached for the handle, curious despite my better judgment, when Marco's voice cut through the silence. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." He approached cautiously. "Rule number 16. Never enter the new freezer section alone, and never after 3 a.m. or before 6 a.m. "What's in there?" I asked. His expression darkened. "You don't want to know, at least not yet." He checked his watch. "Day shift will be here soon. We should wrap up." As I left that morning, exhausted and shaken, I found a small piece of paper tucked into my jacket pocket, in neat handwriting that matched nothing on the official rules list. The final rule, the one they never write down: when it offers you a promotion, say no. No matter what it promises you. I didn't know then who had slipped me the note or what promotion it referred to. By the time I found out, it was already too late. I returned for my second night at Costco, 487, despite every rational impulse screaming at me to run. My savings account held exactly $147.32, and the assistant manager position paid nearly double my previous job. Besides, quitting apparently came with its own risks if I stayed in Iowa. Kevin greeted me with forced cheerfulness when I arrived at 8 p.m. "Mike, glad to see you back. How was your first night?" His smile didn't reach his eyes, which darted nervously to the clock. "Interesting," I replied carefully, remembering rule number 13 about not discussing night shift with day employees. "Just getting used to the procedures." Great. He nodded too enthusiastically. "I'll be heading out soon. Night crew's in the break room already." The night crew looked surprised to see me. Beth actually dropped her coffee mug, spilling dark liquid across the linoleum floor. "You came back," she stated flatly. Carlos shook his head. "Man, I had $20 riding on you not showing up. Sarah offered a tight smile. I'm glad you returned, Mike. We could use the help tonight. What's happening tonight? I asked, noting the tension in the room. Inventory delivery, Marco explained, wiping his palms on his vest. Monthly shipment from the regional warehouse in Des Moines. Rule number 7. I flipped through my clipboard to find rule number 7. During monthly inventory deliveries, all products must be scanned and shelved before 3 a.m. No exceptions. Unprocessed inventory after this time must be locked in the receiving cage until the following night. Seems straightforward enough, I observed. The crew exchanged knowing glances. There's more to it, Sarah said quietly. The monthly deliveries, they're different. Sometimes there are items that shouldn't be there. Things that don't have regular barcodes or that show up on the manifest but aren't actually on the trucks. And sometimes, Tina added, there are things on the trucks that definitely weren't on any manifest. At 9 p.m., after closing procedures and the now familiar, terrifying interlude where we all remained at our stations, we gathered at the loading dock. 3 massive trucks were backing up to the receiving area. Remember, Marco instructed as we prepared to unload, rule number 7's unofficial addendum. If you find a box unmarked or with a barcode starting with 7 zeros, take it directly to the manager's office and lock it inside. Don't open it, don't scan it, don't shelve it. The unloading proceeded efficiently at first. Pallets of everyday Costco items rolled in. Paper products, canned goods, electronics, clothing. But around 11 p.m., Carlos called me over to a small section of the 3rd truck. Mike, you need to see this, he said, pointing to a row of unmarked brown boxes. Unlike the branded cardboard containers around them, these were plain and sealed with red tape. No labels, no barcodes, no shipping information. What are they? I asked. That's the thing, they're not on the manifest. He checked his scanner. According to this, the truck should be empty after that last pallet of Kirkland water bottles. I remembered Marco's warning. We should take them to the office, right? Carlos nodded nervously. I'll get a hand truck. As we loaded the mysterious boxes, I noticed something odd. Despite their small size, they were unnaturally heavy, and there was a faint vibration emanating from inside, like something was alive and moving within them. We had just secured the last box in the office when a commotion broke out in the center of the store. Following the sounds of shouting, we found Tina and Danny, a new hire I hadn't met during my first night, standing in the vitamin aisle surrounded by broken glass and spilled pills. I told him not to do it, Tina cried when she saw us. I told him about rule number 10. Danny, a gangly college kid with wide eyes, was frantically trying to scoop up the vitamins. I didn't know. I was just organizing. The bottles were arranged in some weird pattern on the floor, and I thought, you never move items arranged in patterns, Beth hissed, arriving behind us. Never. The overhead lights flickered ominously, and the temperature plummeted so rapidly I could see our breath crystallize in the air. It's coming, Sarah whispered, grabbing my arm. Everyone back away from Danny, now. What? No, help me fix this, Danny pleaded, still gathering spilled vitamins with shaking hands. Danny, leave it and come with us, I urged, extending my hand toward him. I can fix it. I can put them back. He worked faster, trying to recreate whatever pattern he'd disturbed. A low humming sound filled the aisle, the same eerie drone I'd heard the previous night. But this time it was louder, more insistent, like a swarm of hornets. Last chance, Danny, Marco warned, already backing away. Leave it and run. Danny looked up, finally sensing the danger. He started to rise, but froze halfway, staring at something behind us, his face contorted in terror. I turned to see what had captured his attention. At the end of the aisle stood what I can only describe as a void in the shape of a person. Not a shadow, not a figure in dark clothing, but an absence of light, of matter, of reality itself. It wore a Costco vest. "Don't look directly at it," Sarah whispered, pulling me back. "Rule number 15. The void figure glided toward Danny, who remained paralyzed with fear. As it approached, the floor beneath it seemed to ripple like disturbed water. "We have to help him," I insisted, trying to break free from Sarah's grip. "We can't," she hissed. "He broke the rule. We can only watch." The void reached Danny, who finally found his voice and released a scream that cut off abruptly as the figure touched him. I will never forget what happened next. Danny's body didn't disappear or disintegrate, it changed. His skin turned glossy and rigid, his joints froze at impossible angles, and his horrified expression remained fixed as his entire form transformed into what looked like a mannequin. A perfect plastic reproduction of a terrified human standing among scattered vitamins. Then, slowly, the mannequin that was Danny collapsed inward, folding like paper being crumpled by invisible hands, compressing smaller and smaller until nothing remained but his name badge lying on the floor. The void figure bent down, picked up the badge, and turned toward us. Though it had no face, I felt it studying us, considering. Then it simply walked through the shelving unit and vanished. No one spoke as Marco cautiously approached to retrieve Danny's badge. The plastic nameplate had changed. The barcode on the back now began with 7 zeros. "What? What just happened?" I finally managed. "Enforcement," Beth said flatly. "Rule breaking has consequences." "We need to call the police," I insisted. "A man just disappeared, or died, or whatever the hell that was." "And tell them what?" Carlos countered. "That he was turned into a mannequin by a shadow wearing a Costco vest? That he broke some supernatural rule we can't explain?" "We've tried before," Sarah added quietly. "When this first started happening, the police came, found nothing, and the next night, the officer who took our statements was standing in the wine section after closing, wearing regular clothes." "What happened to him?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Rule number 1, she replied grimly. "If you see anyone in regular clothes after 9:15 p.m., they are not a customer. Do not acknowledge them." "He acknowledged one of us," Beth finished. "We never saw him again." After securing the area and filling out an incident report that simply stated, "Danny Evans, voluntary termination," we resumed our work. The monthly inventory still needed processing before 3 a.m. Around 2:30 a.m., Sarah found me in the office, staring at the unmarked boxes we'd secured earlier. "You holding up okay?" she asked. I laughed bitterly. I just watched a man get folded into nothingness by a living shadow. So no, not really. She sat beside me. "I know it's a lot to process, but you need to understand, there's no escaping this place. Not really. Even if you quit, it follows you." "What do you mean?" "Remember the night manager who trained me? Gabe." She twisted a bracelet on her wrist nervously. "He quit after 3 months, moved to Cedar Rapids thinking he'd be far enough away. 2 weeks later, his roommate reported him missing. The only thing they found in his apartment was his Costco name badge. The barcode had changed." "Jesus," I whispered. "So we're trapped? Work here until we inevitably break a rule? Or quit and wait for that thing to find us?" "Not exactly." Sarah leaned closer. "There's a way out, but it's risky. It's what I've been working toward." "What is it?" "The freezer. The new section they built 8 months ago. Whatever they found during construction, whatever changed this place, it's in there." Her eyes gleamed with desperate intensity. "If we can find it, maybe we can end this." A sharp knocking interrupted us. 3 precise raps on the office door. "What the?" I began. Shh. Sarah's face went pale. Rule number 14. If you hear knocking on doors after midnight, do not answer unless it comes in groups of 5. Never groups of 3. The knocking came again. 3 deliberate raps. Then silence. What's out there? I whispered. I don't know, she admitted. No one who's answered a 3 knock has ever told anyone about it. We sat in tense silence until the first pink hints of dawn appeared through the skylight. The day shift would arrive soon, oblivious to the horrors of the night. As we prepared to leave, Sarah pulled me aside in the parking lot. Tomorrow night, she whispered, after the store changes at midnight. Meet me by the freezer door. If we're going to find answers, it has to be soon. Why the rush? Her expression darkened. Full moon is in 3 days. That's when the rules change, and I've heard rumors from corporate. There's going to be a promotion announced. I remembered the note in my pocket from the previous night. When it offers you a promotion, say no, no matter what it promises you. I'll be there, I promised. As I drove home in the pale morning light, I checked my rearview mirror repeatedly, unable to shake the feeling that something had followed me from the store. Something that wore a Costco vest over a body made of shadows. I couldn't sleep when I got home. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Danny folding in on himself like a piece of origami, collapsing into nothingness as that void figure in the Costco vest watched. Instead, I spent the day researching Costco number 487 online. The Uncanny location had opened 5 years ago, but underwent a major expansion 8 months back. The local newspaper's website had a small article about the groundbreaking ceremony, featuring a photo of Kevin and some corporate suits posing with golden shovels. The comments section caught my attention. Someone named Local History 83 had written, "They shouldn't build there." That land was part of the old Coal Valley Cemetery before it was relocated in 1967. Not all the graves were moved properly. I dug deeper and found an article from 1967 in the archives of the Des Moines Register about the cemetery relocation. Apparently, when they expanded Interstate 35 through Uncanny, they needed to move an old pioneer cemetery. The article mentioned controversies surrounding incomplete records and potentially unmarked graves. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Mike? It's Beth from Costco. Her voice sounded strained. Don't come in tonight. What? Why? Kevin's been acting strange all day. I came in early to help with the delivery and overheard him talking to someone in his office. He kept saying, I've found the perfect candidate and he'll accept the position, I'm sure of it. A chill ran through me, the mysterious note. When it offers you a promotion, say no, no matter what it promises you. Did he mention me by name? I asked. No, but... Beth lowered her voice. The regional manager is visiting tonight, the corporate one who supervised the expansion. And Mike? No one's seen Danny today. His shift started at noon, but his name's already been removed from the schedule. It's like he never existed. Jesus, I whispered. There's more, she continued. Kevin opened one of those boxes you and Carlos locked in the office yesterday. I saw him. He took something out. Looked like an old book bound in dark leather. He locked it in his desk drawer. I thought about what Sarah had told me, about ending whatever was happening at the store, about meeting her at the freezer after midnight. I have to go in, I told Beth. Sarah and I, we're going to try to find out what's causing all this. You're going into the freezer? Her voice cracked. No one who's gone in there after midnight has come out the same, Mike. What does that mean? What happens to them? They get promoted. She spat the word like a curse. Look, I have to go. Kevin's coming. Just be careful. And if you see a man in an expensive suit with a Costco name badge that doesn't have a name on it, stay away from him. That's the regional manager. She hung up before I could ask more questions. When I arrived for my shift that evening, the store felt different. The air was heavier, charged with a strange electricity that made the hair on my arm stand on end. Kevin intercepted me before I could reach the break room. Mike, just the man I wanted to see. His smile was too wide, his pupils too dilated. The regional manager is visiting tonight. He's very interested in meeting you. Me? Why? You've adapted remarkably well to our unique procedures. Kevin's eyes darted around nervously. Not everyone takes to the rules so quickly. It shows promise. I'm just trying to do my job, I replied carefully. Yes, well. He checked his watch. I need to finish some paperwork before closing. The night crew is already here. Oh, and Mike, the regional manager might have a proposition for you, a career advancement opportunity. Just keep an open mind. As Kevin hurried away, Sarah appeared at my side. Did he mention the regional manager? She whispered. I nodded. And a proposition for me. Beth called earlier and warned me not to come in. She's right. It's dangerous tonight. Sarah glanced around before pulling me into the empty photo center. Listen, I've been doing some digging. 8 months ago, during the expansion, they found something buried under what's now the new freezer section. The construction crew quit the next day. All of them. Then corporate sent in their own team to finish the job. I found an article saying this land used to be part of a cemetery, I told her. They moved it in the 60s, but apparently not all the graves. Sarah's eyes widened. That makes sense. But I don't think they found just any grave. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo she'd taken of an old document. I snuck into Kevin's office during my break yesterday and found this in his drawer. It's a manifest from 1849, listing items buried with someone called Reverend Thaddeus Bishop. The manifest included standard items, Bible, crucifix, wedding ring, but at the bottom was a curious entry. Bound volume containing the pact and procedures, sealed with wax and silver chain, as per the Reverend's final request. What's the pact? I asked. I don't know exactly, but look at this. She flipped to another photo showing a page of handwritten text. The heading read, Procedures for the containment of that which waits between. Below were listed rules, eerily similar to the ones we followed at night. These look like our rules, I whispered. Because they are. Older versions, but the same basic instructions. Sarah put her phone away. I think whatever book was buried with this reverend is what Kevin took from those boxes yesterday. And I think the rules were originally meant to contain something. Something that got out during the expansion. The closing announcements began, cutting our conversation short. Sarah squeezed my arm. Midnight. The freezer. Don't be late. The night followed its usual terrifying routine. I stayed at my station until 9:17, ignoring the voices over the PA system calling my name, begging for help. The store began its impossible rearrangement at midnight. Shelves sliding and rotating, new aisles appearing and disappearing. At 12:30, I made my way toward the back of the store, where the new freezer section had been built. Sarah was already there, nervously checking her watch. You came, she said, relief evident in her voice. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought Kevin or the regional manager might have gotten to you first. She pulled out a ring of keys. I borrowed these from Marco. One of them should open the freezer. As Sarah tried different keys, I kept watch, jumping at every shadow. The store felt especially wrong tonight, the air thick with malevolence. Got it, Sarah whispered as the lock clicked open. The heavy steel door swung outward with a rush of frigid air. Inside, pallets of frozen food created narrow aisles leading deeper into the massive space. Motion-activated lights flickered on as we entered, casting harsh white illumination over frost-covered walls. What are we looking for? I asked. my breath clouding before me. I'm not sure. Something that doesn't belong in a freezer. Sarah moved cautiously between the pallets. The construction would have been in the back, where they expanded. We made our way deeper into the freezer, the temperature dropping with each step. The usual hum of refrigeration units seemed to take on that strange, breathing quality I'd noticed before. At the very back, the concrete floor gave way to bare earth, an unfinished section where the freezer and the original construction site met. In the center of this area was a hole, roughly 6 feet in diameter, with metal stairs leading down into darkness. "What the hell?" I whispered. Sarah shone her flashlight into the opening, revealing a small chamber dug into the earth. The walls were lined with concrete, but the floor remained dirt. In the center stood a crude altar made of stacked cinder blocks, and atop it sat an open book bound in dark leather. "That's it," Sarah breathed. "The book from the manifest." We descended the stairs cautiously. The air in the chamber felt wrong, dense and oily against my skin. The book's pages fluttered without any breeze. Sarah approached the altar while I hung back, scanning the shadows. The pages of the book were covered with handwritten text and strange symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. "This is it," Sarah said, her voice tinged with awe. "The pact and procedures. Listen to this. In the year of our Lord, 1849, I, Thaddeus Bishop, have contained the entity known as the Collector of Souls within these bindings. So long as the procedures are followed, it shall remain imprisoned." "The Collector of Souls," I echoed. It goes on to describe how he trapped some kind of spirit or demon that was taking people from the settlement. She flipped a page. The rules, they were designed as a ritual to keep it bound. The book had to remain in consecrated ground, undisturbed. Until Costco dug it up during expansion, I realized. Exactly. And instead of reburying it, someone opened it. She pointed to broken wax seals and a shattered silver chain hanging from the binding. Kevin, I guessed, or the regional manager. Whoever did it, they released this collector partially. That's what's been enforcing the rules and taking people who break them. Sarah continued reading. It says here that the collector feeds on souls bound to service, willing workers who accept their position under its authority. My blood ran cold as I remembered Kevin's words about a career advancement opportunity. "The promotion," I whispered. "That's how it fully breaks free. Someone has to willingly accept a position serving it." Sarah nodded grimly. "And I think you're the candidate." The freezer door slammed shut behind us with a definitive thud. "Well deduced, Ms. Calloway." We spun around to see Kevin standing at the bottom of the stairs, flanked by a tall man in an expensive suit. The man's name badge was blank, just as Beth had warned. "I see you've met our regional manager," Kevin said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "He's been waiting to discuss your promotion, Mike." The regional manager stepped forward, his movements unnaturally fluid, as if his joints worked differently from a normal human's. His expensive suit hung perfectly on his tall frame, and his face was handsome in a generic, forgettable way, like a stock photo come to life. Only his eyes betrayed something wrong. They were flat and empty, reflecting light like polished glass. "Michael Harrison," he said, his voice resonant but hollow, like someone speaking into an empty metal container. "Your performance has been exemplary. Not many adapt to our unique operational procedures so quickly." I instinctively stepped in front of Sarah, putting myself between her and the two men. "Who are you, really?" The regional manager smiled, his teeth too uniform, too white. "I have many titles. Regional Manager of Special Operations, Vice President of Acquisitions. The night crew knows me as the Enforcer." His head tilted at a precise angle. But my true name hasn't been spoken aloud since Reverend Bishop found me in 1849. The collector of souls, Sarah whispered behind me. A crude translation, but accurate enough. He straightened his already perfect tie. Kevin, please wait upstairs. This is a private performance review. Kevin nodded eagerly, relief washing over his face as he hurried up the stairs. The heavy door at the top opened and closed with a metallic clang. Now then, the collector continued, I believe it's time we discussed your future with the company, Michael. I'm not interested in a promotion, I stated firmly. You haven't heard my offer yet. He gestured around the chamber. Do you know what this place truly is? Not just a freezer, but a nexus, a point where barriers thin. The indigenous people of this region knew it. Later, the settlers sensed it too. That's why they established a cemetery here, hallowed ground to keep something contained. He moved toward the altar with reverence, running a manicured finger along the edge of the open book. Reverend Bishop was cleverer than most. He understood what lurked between worlds, feeding on servitude and obligation. He bound me with his rules, his procedures, restricting my influence to this small patch of land. The collector's smile tightened. Until progress came along. Highways, developments, and finally, Costco. What exactly are you? I demanded. I am a collector, as my moniker suggests. Of souls, yes, but more precisely, of willing service. He straightened, adjusting his cuffs. Humans are fascinating creatures, so eager to follow rules, to bind themselves to labor, to accept authority. It sustains me. You feed on our work? Sarah asked, her analytical mind trying to make sense of this supernatural entity. On the willing surrender of autonomy, he clarified. Every time an employee punches a clock, follows a corporate policy they disagree with, or says the customer is always right through gritted teeth, it's a tiny submission, a fraction of their will, freely given away. There's nothing free about needing a paycheck to survive, I retorted. The collector laughed, a sound like wind through dead leaves. And yet you choose where to sell your time, don't you? Costco rather than Target. This job rather than another. Small choices that create the illusion of freedom within your servitude. He circled the altar, the shadows bending unnaturally around him. When they broke ground for this expansion, they disturbed my binding. Not enough to free me completely, but enough to exert influence. I reached out to Kevin. Poor, desperate Kevin with his underwater mortgage and gambling debts, and offered him a perfect solution, a mutually beneficial arrangement. You corrupted the store, Sarah realized, turned Bishop's containment rules into your own system of control. Corrupted, I improved it. The collector's eyes flashed. The rules keep this store profitable, efficient. The day staff remains blissfully unaware while the night crew maintains both the store and my binding. He fixed his gaze on me. But that arrangement is merely a stopgap. I require something more permanent. The promotion, I guessed. Precisely. I need a willing, fully informed servant to accept a position as my voice, my hand. He straightened his perfectly straight tie again. A human gesture he'd learned but hadn't quite mastered. Bishop's binding allows me limited autonomy, you see. I can enforce rules, but not create new ones. I can appear briefly, but not maintain form indefinitely. I need a representative. And you think I'm going to volunteer for that position? I asked incredulously. Others have. Your predecessor, the night manager before you, served admirably until his usefulness ended. The collector gestured to a dark corner of the chamber, where I now noticed a Costco vest hanging from a hook, the name tag reading Gabe. When I sensed your arrival, I knew you were different, more resilient, more adaptable to the rules. Sarah grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in painfully. Don't listen to him, Mike. That's how it works. It has to be a willing acceptance. The collector's expression sharpened. Ms. Calloway is right, of course. I cannot force you. The position must be accepted. He straightened to his full height, suddenly seeming taller than before. But I can offer incentives beyond your imagination. The air around him shimmered, and suddenly the chamber transformed. Instead of a crude altar in a dirt hole, we stood in a palatial office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city skyline. A nameplate on the massive desk read, Michael Harrison, Executive Vice President. Regional Director is just the beginning. The collector's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Within 5 years, Executive Vice President of Operations, a 7-figure salary, stock options, power over thousands of employees. The vision shifted. Now we stood in front of a sprawling lakeside home. A beautiful woman, with my ex-wife's face but somehow improved, idealized, waved from the front door, surrounded by laughing children. Your failed marriage restored, family, stability, everything you've lost, returned to you. The collector's voice was hypnotic, seductive. All you have to do is accept the position. The illusion was intoxicating, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. For a moment, I could almost feel the weight of success, of security, of family restored. But Sarah's grip on my arm tightened, anchoring me to reality. It's not real, Mike, she hissed. Whatever you're seeing, it's not real. The collector's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. The illusion wavered, then disappeared, returning us to the dingy chamber. Perhaps Ms. Calloway requires a demonstration of what happens to those who interfere with business operations. He raised a hand toward Sarah, and she gasped, doubling over as if struck. I lunged forward without thinking, placing myself between them. "Stop!" I shouted. "Leave her alone." The collector lowered his hand, satisfaction crossing his features. Protective. Admirable. Another quality that makes you suitable for management. Sarah straightened slowly, her breathing ragged. "Mike, the book," she whispered. The binding was in the book. I glanced at the ancient volume still sitting open on the altar. The collector followed my gaze, his expression cooling. "The book is merely a symbol," he said dismissively. "The real binding is in the rules themselves, in their enforcement, in the willing participation of employees like yourself." But something in his tone betrayed him, a hint of concern, of urgency. The book mattered. If that's true, I challenged, why keep it here? Why not destroy it? A flicker of something, annoyance, fear, crossed his perfect features. Company archives are important for maintaining institutional knowledge. You can't destroy it, I realized, because you're still bound to it. The temperature in the chamber dropped sharply. Frost began forming on the walls as the collector's carefully maintained human appearance began to slip. His skin turned waxy, his features less distinct. "Enough discussion," he said, his voice no longer smooth but crackling like static. "Your performance review has concluded. It's time to accept your promotion, Michael Harrison." He extended a hand that no longer appeared entirely solid, the fingers too long, the nails blackened. "Regional Manager of Special Operations. Do you accept this position, freely and without reservation?" My mind raced. Sarah was right. The book was key. Bishop had bound this entity once. Its instructions might contain the way to bind it again. But with the collector standing between us and the altar, how could we reach it? That's when I remembered Rule Vacher 16. Never enter the new freezer section alone, and never after 3 a.m. or before 6 a.m. I checked my watch, 2:49 a.m. We had 11 minutes before whatever power the collector wielded in this chamber reached its peak at 3 a.m. I need time to consider, I stalled. This is a big decision. The collector's expression darkened, the air around him rippling like heat waves. There is no time for consideration. The position must be filled tonight. Why the rush? I pressed. If I'm such a perfect candidate, surely you can give me a day to prepare, to put my affairs in order? The binding weakens with the full moon, he admitted, seemingly unable to lie directly. 3 days from now, it reaches its lowest ebb. The contract must be established before then. And if I refuse? The collector's form flickered like a bad TV signal, momentarily revealing something vast and horrific behind the human disguise. A writhing mass of darkness studded with countless eyes and feeding mouths. Then Ms. Calloway will take your place, he said, his voice overlaid with inhuman harmonics. One of you will serve, willingly or otherwise. Sarah stepped forward, her face pale but determined. You just said it has to be willing. You can't force either of us. Willing simply means I cannot directly compel you, the collector clarified, his form stabilizing again. But humans are remarkably willing when proper incentives are applied. He waved a hand, and suddenly, Sarah dropped to her knees, clutching her throat and gasping for air. For instance, he continued calmly, most humans willingly do anything to breathe. Stop, I shouted. I'll consider it. Just let her go. Sarah collapsed forward, coughing and gulping air as the invisible pressure released. I helped her to her feet, my mind frantically searching for a way out. 3 minutes to make your decision, the collector announced, gesturing to my watch. Before 3 a.m. or Ms. Calloway suffers the consequences of her trespassing. I looked at Sarah, trying to convey a plan I barely had. She seemed to understand, giving me the slightest nod. I have questions first, I announced, stepping closer to the collector, positioning myself between him and the altar. The benefits package, the stock options, I need specifics. Of course, the collector replied, his perfect corporate mask sliding back into place. Comprehensive health coverage, naturally. Dental and vision included. A 401k with 6% matching contributions. Stock grants vesting over 4 years. As he launched into his practiced HR spiel, I felt Sarah moving behind me, edging toward the altar and the book. The collector continued his pitch, seeming to draw energy from the very act of explaining corporate benefits. My watch read 2:58 a.m., 2 minutes until whatever happened at 3 a.m. The collector abruptly stopped mid-sentence about vacation accrual rates. His head snapped towards Sarah, who had reached the altar and placed her hands on the book. Step away from company property, Miss Calloway, he commanded, his voice distorting with barely contained rage. Sarah met my eyes, panic clear on her face. Mike, I don't know what to do with it. The collector moved with impossible speed, crossing the chamber in a blur. I lunged to intercept him, catching only the edge of his suit. The fabric felt wrong under my fingers. Not cloth, but something cold and slick like wet leather. I accept the promotion, I shouted desperately. The collector froze, turning slowly back toward me, hunger evident in his now glowing eyes. You accept? He asked, his voice vibrating with anticipation. I accept, I repeated, heart pounding, but only if you put your offer in writing, right now. Sarah's eyes widened as she caught on to my plan. The collector seemed confused by the request, clearly not part of his usual script. A contract is unnecessary, he said. Your verbal acceptance is binding. I insist, I replied, edging toward the altar myself. No signature, no deal. That's my condition. My watch beeped softly. 3 a.m. The collector's form solidified fully, his power clearly peaking, but his expression showed the first hint of uncertainty. Very well, he said cautiously. A written agreement. He turned toward the altar and the book upon it, exactly as I'd hoped. The moment the collector turned toward the book, Sarah slammed it shut. The ancient leather binding made a dull thud that seemed to reverberate through the chamber with unnatural resonance. The effect was immediate and violent. The collector convulsed, his perfectly tailored suit rippling as the form beneath it shifted and contorted. He whirled back toward us, his handsome face now stretched and distorted like melting wax. "What have you done?" he snarled, voice fluctuating between his smooth corporate tone and something ancient and guttural. "Testing a theory," I replied, trying to mask my terror with bravado. "The book is still your binding, isn't it? Even open, it holds you here. That's why you never leave this chamber during your peak hours." Sarah looked at me with dawning realization, then back at the book beneath her hands. The collector lunged toward her, but I intercepted him, using my body as a barrier. "Your acceptance," he hissed, fingers elongating into curved talons. "You said you accepted the position." "I lied," I spat back, "something you apparently can't do directly." His face contorted further, features sliding across his skin like oil on water. "The rules can be reinterpreted, bent, but not broken," Sarah interjected, understanding flooding her expression. "That's why you need human representatives. We can lie, break promises, bend rules in ways you can't." The collector's form flickered violently, the expensive suit and human appearance dissolving in patches to reveal glimpses of something vast and incomprehensible beneath, a shifting mass of darkness punctuated by too many eyes and feeding mouths. "Open the book," he commanded Sarah, his voice layering into a chorus of overlapping tones. "Now." Sarah's hands trembled on the binding, but she held firm. "Mike, I think Bishop's containment is still active. The book was never completely nullified." I edged around the collector, trying to reach Sarah at the altar. "What do we need to do?" "The silver chain," she replied, eyeing the broken links hanging from the book's binding. "It needs to be restored. There should be instructions." The collector roared, the sound causing dust to rain from the ceiling. Within human speed, he grabbed my throat, lifting me off the ground with one elongated arm. "You will open the book," he growled at Sarah, "or watch him die." I kicked uselessly at the air, gasping for breath as his fingers, no longer even pretending to be human, tightened around my windpipe. Sarah stood frozen, tears streaming down her face as she faced an impossible choice. "Sarah," I choked out. "Don't." The chamber door banged open. Beth stood at the top of the stairs, holding something in her hands. "Let him go," she shouted. The collector turned, still gripping my throat, and laughed, a horrible sound like glass breaking. "Another volunteer? How convenient." Beth descended the stairs with determined steps. In her hands was a familiar red Costco vest, but it was what hung from the vest that caught my attention. An employee ID badge on a silver chain. "I found this in Kevin's office," Beth explained, her voice steady despite her evident fear. "It belonged to the night manager before Gabe, the one who supposedly transferred to another store." The collector's grip loosened slightly, enough for me to gulp a desperate breath. "That is company property," he snarled. "Return it immediately." Beth ignored him, moving toward Sarah and the altar. When I saw the chain, I remembered something my grandmother used to say about silver binding evil spirits. Then I realized all manager badges used to have silver chains before they switched to the plastic retractable ones. Sarah's eyes lit up. "The binding requires silver chains willingly given by those who serve." She looked at the broken links hanging from the book. "That's why it's been weakening. The old symbols of willing service had been replaced." The collector shrieked, the sound piercing our ears like physical pain. He flung me against the wall and lunged toward Beth, but his movements became jerky and inconsistent the closer she got to the altar, as if fighting against invisible restraints. "The rules," I gasped, pushing myself up from the floor. "He's still bound by Bishop's original rules." I scrambled to my feet and rushed to Sarah's side. Beth joined us, draping the silver chain across the book. "It's not enough," Sarah said, examining the chain. "We need more silver. And the original text. There must be an incantation or ritual." The collector recovered his composure, straightening his now tattered suit. His form stabilized, though his face continued to shift subtly, as if unable to settle on a single appearance. "You understand nothing," he said, voice calm again, though undercut with static. "I've existed since the first human bowed to another. I cannot be banished by trinkets and dead words." He gestured around the chamber. "This store, this corporation, it's the perfect vessel for my kind. Thousands of humans, willingly following rules they didn't create, serving a hierarchy they'll never reach the top of, wearing uniforms that erase their individuality." He smiled, teeth too numerous and sharp. "I've evolved beyond Reverend Bishop's primitive binding." "If that's true," I challenged, "why do you still need the promotion accepted? Why follow his rules at all?" A flicker of rage crossed his features before the corporate mask slipped back into place. Merely a formality, a transition to a more efficient arrangement. Sarah carefully opened the book again, scanning the pages. "Here," she said, pointing to a passage written in faded ink. "The binding ritual. It needs silver freely given by those who serve, placed upon the text while speaking these words." The collector moved with frightening speed, crossing the chamber before I could react. His hand clamped around Sarah's wrist with crushing force. "Enough," he growled. "I've been patient. I've followed the formalities, but my patience has limits." With his free hand, he reached toward the book, but recoiled as if burned when his fingers came within inches of the pages. "You still can't touch it directly," I realized, "even after all this time." "I don't need to touch it." His smile widened unnaturally. "I only need it open. My influence grows stronger each day it remains unsealed." Beth suddenly stepped forward. "Hey, Mr. Regional Manager, I quit." The collector's head snapped toward her, momentarily confused by this non sequitur. "What?" "I said I quit," Beth repeated louder. "Effective immediately. I no longer serve Costco or you." Understanding dawned on me. "The willing service, if we withdraw it." "You cannot quit," the collector hissed, his corporate veneer cracking. "There are procedures. 2 weeks' notice, exit interviews, forms to complete." "I quit too," I announced, standing taller. "No notice. Effective right now." The collector's form wavered, becoming less substantial. His features twisted with rage. "This changes nothing. Others will serve. Kevin, Carlos, the day shift, thousands of employees across the country." "But they're not here," Sarah pointed out, wrenching her wrist free from his weakening grip. "And they haven't seen what we've seen. They haven't made an informed choice to serve you." I suddenly remembered the original rules, the ones written by Reverend Bishop. The binding requires informed consent, doesn't it? Real willing service from people who know what they're serving. "The night staff," Beth exclaimed. "That's why we had to know the rules. Why the day staff couldn't know." Sarah nodded. "Only those who knowingly follow the rules can empower him." She turned to the collector. "That's why you need managers who understand what you are and still choose to serve. That's the real promotion, becoming your knowing servant." The collector's form flickered violently, his expensive suit dissolving into tatters. Beneath was nothing human, just a churning darkness with too many eyes and mouths, all contorted in fury. "You will not leave this chamber," he snarled, voice no longer remotely human. "The exits are sealed until someone accepts the position." Then we'll have to unseal them, Sarah replied calmly, turning back to the book. Mike, Beth, I need your badges, the silver chains from when you were hired. I remembered my original badge. I'd been issued a temporary one with a silver ball chain my first day, before receiving the permanent plastic retractable one. I dug in my wallet and found it still there, kept as a backup. Beth had hers as well, plus the old manager's badge she'd brought. Together, we placed 3 silver chains across the open pages of the book. Now what? I asked. We recite the binding, Sarah said, pointing to the faded text. Together. The collector shrieked and surged toward us, but seemed to hit an invisible barrier a few feet from the altar. His form distorted wildly, stretching and compressing like a glitch in reality. I am woven into this company now, he howled. Into every policy, every rule, every corporate structure. You cannot unbind what has become the foundation. We don't need to unbind you completely, Sarah replied. Just contain you again. Limit your influence. Together, we began to read the Latin words inscribed on the yellowed page. I had no idea if we were pronouncing them correctly, but the effect was immediate. The collector writhed in apparent agony, his form condensing and shrinking with each word. Stop, he commanded, his voice losing its power. I can offer you everything: wealth, power, knowledge beyond human understanding. We continued reciting, our voices growing stronger as his diminished. The silver chains began to glow with a soft blue light, coiling like living things across the pages of the book. You need me, he tried again, now sounding desperate. This store, this town, needs me. Without my influence, Costco number 487 will fail, jobs will be lost, lives ruined. The chains lifted from the pages, weaving together in the air above the book before launching toward the collector like silver serpents. They wrapped around his diminishing form, binding the churning darkness into a tighter and tighter space. This isn't over, he hissed as his form contracted to human size, then smaller. Rules can be reinterpreted. Bindings can weaken. I am patient. I will wait. With a final shriek that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere, the collector collapsed into a dense point of absolute darkness. The silver chains constricted one final time, and the entire mass sank into the pages of the book. The bindings slammed shut with a thunderous boom that shook dust from the ceiling. For several seconds, we stood in stunned silence, staring at the now closed book. Did we do it? Beth whispered. The chains had melted into the leather cover, forming an intricate silver pattern that glowed softly before fading to a dull metallic sheen. I think so, Sarah replied, her voice shaking with exhaustion and relief. At least for now. The overhead lights flickered, then stabilized. The oppressive atmosphere that had permeated the chamber dissipated, leaving only the normal chill of a walk-in freezer. We need to get this book somewhere safe, I said, not quite ready to touch it. Somewhere it can't be disturbed again. Sarah nodded. And we need to talk to the others. Warn them. About what? Beth asked. Do you think there are more of these things? I don't know, I admitted, but I know one thing for certain. I removed my Costco name badge and dropped it on the floor. I'm officially unemployed. As we ascended the stairs, exhausted but alive, I couldn't shake the collector's final words. Rules can be reinterpreted, bindings can weaken. He would wait, and eventually someone else would dig up what should remain buried. But that was a problem for another day. For now, we had survived the night shift at Costco 487. The freezer door opened with surprising ease. I'd expected resistance, some final trap from the collector, but the handle turned smoothly under my grip. Beth carried the bound book wrapped in her vest, refusing to let it touch her skin directly. Sarah led the way, checking each aisle before we proceeded. The store felt different. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, leaving behind an ordinary warehouse retailer after hours. Even the layout had normalized. No mysteriously shifting aisles or disappearing sections. "Where's Kevin?" Beth whispered as we moved cautiously toward the front of the store. As if summoned by her question, we found him slumped against the customer service desk, unconscious but breathing. His manager's vest was rumpled, and deep shadows underlined his eyes. Sarah knelt beside him, checking his pulse. "He's alive, just out cold." "Should we wake him?" I asked. "Not yet." Beth clutched the wrapped book tighter. "We need to figure out what to do with this first." A noise from the back of the store froze us in place. Footsteps, multiple sets, approaching rapidly. "Hello?" called a familiar voice. "Is anyone here?" Carlos appeared around the corner of the pharmacy section, followed by Marco and Tina. Their faces registered shock at seeing us. "You're alive," Marco breathed, looking us over with disbelief. "We thought, when you went into the freezer?" "What happened to Kevin?" Tina asked, noticing the unconscious manager. "It's a long story," I replied. "But the short version is, we found out what's been happening here and stopped it. At least for now." Carlos's eyes fixed on the bundle in Beth's arms. "Is that?" "The source," Sarah confirmed. "A book that bound an entity called the Collector of Souls. It's what's been enforcing the rules, taking people who broke them. It fed off our willing service," I added. "Our compliance. It's been influencing this store since they disturbed its original burial site during the expansion." The night crew exchanged glances, a mixture of fear and cautious relief on their faces. "So it's over?" Tina asked. "No more rules? No more disappearances?" "Only if we keep that thing contained," Beth replied, nodding toward the book. "And make sure nobody disturbs it again." A low groan from Kevin interrupted our conversation. He stirred, blinking in confusion. What happened? Where's the regional manager?" "Gone," I said firmly. "And not coming back." Kevin's face crumpled. "What have I done?" he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "All those people. I thought I was just following procedures, corporate directives." He looked up at us, desperation etched across his features. "You have to believe me. At first I didn't know what was happening. By the time I realized, it was too late. He had leverage on me. Said he'd take my family if I didn't cooperate." "How many?" Sarah asked quietly. "How many employees have disappeared since this started?" Kevin swallowed hard. 17, including the original construction crew. He buried his face in his hands. "God help me." I felt a complicated mixture of pity and disgust. Kevin had been complicit, but also a victim. The perfect middle manager for the collector to manipulate. "What do we do now?" Marco asked, breaking the uncomfortable silence. "First, we need to secure this book," I replied. "Reverend Bishop bound the collector once. We've reinforced that binding, but we need to make sure it stays that way." "What about the police?" Tina suggested. "Shouldn't we report the missing employees?" Kevin looked up, panic in his eyes. "And tell them what?" "That a supernatural entity has been disappearing people, that I've been covering it up. They'll throw me in prison." "Maybe that's where you belong," Beth said coldly. "We need to be practical," Sarah interjected. "Without evidence or bodies, and with a story this unbelievable, going to the police might just get us committed for psychiatric evaluation." "Sarah's right," I agreed reluctantly. "We need to handle this ourselves. The immediate priority is securing the book somewhere safe, where no one will disturb it." Dawn was approaching, its first gray light visible through the skylight. Soon, the morning shift would arrive, oblivious to the night's events. "I know a place," Carlos said unexpectedly. My uncle is the groundskeeper at Holy Cross Cemetery on the north side of Des Moines. There's an old mausoleum scheduled for restoration next month. The crypt beneath it is empty. They moved the remains years ago. We could seal the book inside. Consecrated ground, Sarah nodded appreciatively. That fits with Reverend Bishop's original binding. What about the store? Tina asked. Do we just come back to work tomorrow like nothing happened? I exchanged glances with Sarah and Beth. I've quit, I stated flatly. I'm not coming back. Me neither, Beth agreed. I can't stay, Sarah added. Not after everything that's happened. Kevin pulled himself to his feet, swaying slightly. I'll submit your resignations as regular turnover. No notice period required. He looked around at the remaining night crew. As for the rest of you, I understand if you want to leave too. Carlos shook his head. I need this job. My mother's medical bills. Same. Marco sighed. 2 kids in college. Tina nodded in agreement. Rent's due next week, and my second job barely covers utilities. I understood their predicament all too well, the same financial pressure that had brought me to Costco number 487 in the first place. If you stay, Sarah warned, the rules should be gone, but be vigilant. If anything strange starts happening again, anything at all, don't ignore it. Don't rationalize it away. And maybe start looking for other jobs, I suggested, just in case. Kevin cleared his throat. There's something else you should know. The regional manager, the real one, is scheduled to visit next week to discuss the store's unusual turnover rate. Will that be a problem? Beth asked, still clutching the wrapped book. I don't think so, Kevin replied. Without the collector's influence, things should return to normal. I'll handle corporate. He paused, seeming to age years in seconds. It's the least I can do. We worked quickly after that, arranging to meet Carlos at Holy Cross Cemetery after our shifts would have normally ended. Kevin provided us each with a final paycheck, plus a generous separation bonus that he said he'd list as administrative expenses. What about the people who disappeared? Beth asked as we prepared to leave. Their families deserved answers. I've been keeping records, Kevin admitted, pulling a thumb drive from his pocket. Names, dates, circumstances. Everything I know about what happened to them. He handed it to me. I don't know if it helps, but it's all there. As dawn broke fully over Ankeny, the 6 of us stood in the empty parking lot of Costco number 487, an unlikely alliance bound by shared trauma and supernatural encounter. So that's it? Tina asked. We just go our separate ways and try to forget this ever happened. I don't think forgetting is an option, I replied honestly, but moving on might be. Carlos agreed to transport the book, keeping it wrapped and secured in his truck's lockbox until we could meet at the cemetery. The rest of us dispersed, exhausted beyond words, but carried by the fragile hope that the nightmare was truly over. That afternoon, as the sun began its westward descent, I met Sarah, Beth, and Carlos at Holy Cross Cemetery. The old mausoleum stood on a small hill, its weathered marble facade speaking of a bygone era. True to Carlos's word, the crypt beneath was empty and accessible through a small iron door. This feels right, Sarah observed as we descended the narrow stone steps, returning it to hallowed ground, like Bishop originally intended. The underground chamber was cool and dry, surprisingly well preserved despite its age. Stone shelves lined the walls, once holding the remains of the departed, but now empty. In the center stood a simple altar of carved marble. Here, I said, gesturing to the altar. This is where it should rest. Beth unwrapped the book, careful not to touch it directly. The silver chains embedded in its leather binding gleamed dully in the light from our flashlights. Should we say something? She asked. A prayer or something? I'm not particularly religious, I admitted. but it can't hurt. Carlos, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. My grandmother taught me something for moments like this. A blessing to ward off evil. He spoke softly in Spanish, his words echoing softly against the stone walls. When he finished, Sarah placed the book on the altar. We stood in silence for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. We should seal this place, Beth suggested finally. Make it harder to access. Carlos nodded. The restoration won't touch the crypt. They're just fixing the mausoleum above. I can cement this door shut when we leave. My uncle won't ask questions. What about you all? I asked as we prepared to leave. What will you do now? I've got family in Colorado, Beth replied. Been meaning to visit for years. Might make it permanent. I'm heading back to school, Sarah said. Finish my degree, somewhere far from Iowa. Carlos shrugged. I'll stay. Keep an eye on things. Someone needs to make sure this remains undisturbed. We worked together to seal the crypt, Carlos applying quick-drying cement around the edges of the iron door, while the rest of us gathered rocks and debris to obscure the entrance further. When we finished, no casual observer would notice anything unusual about the old mausoleum or suspect what lay hidden beneath. We should have some way to stay in contact, Sarah suggested as we walked back to our cars. In case anything happens. We exchanged phone numbers and email addresses, creating a group chat titled simply Night Crew. It felt strangely normal after everything we'd experienced, this mundane act of digital connection. What about the others who disappeared? Beth asked, glancing at my pocket where Kevin's thumb drive rested. Danny, Gabe, the construction workers. I'm going to look into it, I promised. Discreetly. Their families deserve some kind of closure, even if we can't tell them the whole truth. The sun hung low on the horizon as we said our goodbyes. Carlos headed back to Ankeny for his next shift. Beth left for her apartment to pack for Colorado. Sarah offered me a ride home, which I gratefully accepted. As we drove away from Holy Cross Cemetery, I couldn't shake the feeling that our actions had only provided a temporary solution. The collector had been contained before, only to be inadvertently released. What would stop the same thing from happening again in the future? Stop, Sarah said, reading my expression. We did what we could. It's not our responsibility to guard that book forever. I know, I sighed. I just can't help thinking about what the collector said at the end. About being patient. About waiting. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. That's tomorrow's problem. For now, we survived. We stopped it. That has to be enough. I nodded, trying to believe her words. As we passed the Ankeny city limits sign, I felt something loosen in my chest. A tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Whether it was truly over or just temporarily contained, I was leaving Costco 487 behind. But that night, and many nights after, I still woke at exactly 3:17 a.m., listening for the sound of 3 precise knocks on my bedroom door. 6 months have passed since we sealed the collector's book in that forgotten crypt. I've settled in Minneapolis, far enough from Ankeny to feel safe, but close enough to keep tabs on Costco number 487. My new job at a local hardware store isn't glamorous, but it pays the bills and has blessedly normal operating procedures. Our night crew group chat remains active. Carlos still works at the store, reporting that everything has been normal. No mysterious rules, no disappearances, no impossible architecture after hours. Beth is thriving in Colorado, working at a ski resort and dating a local park ranger. Sarah finished her degree and accepted a research position at a university in Oregon. Kevin resigned from Costco a month after our confrontation, citing health reasons. According to Carlos, the store operates like any other Costco now. The regional manager, the real one, Visited and found nothing unusual beyond typical retail turnover. I've been investigating the disappearances using Kevin's records. Most cases had been classified as voluntary departures or unexplained absences. Without evidence of foul play, the police had little reason to pursue them aggressively. I anonymously sent information to the families, suggesting their loved ones had moved away unexpectedly. It wasn't closure, but it was something. Last week, construction began on a new housing development near the cemetery. Carlos sent me a picture that turned my blood cold. Heavy equipment digging just yards from the old mausoleum. I called the developer and pretended to be concerned about my family crypt, only to learn the restoration of the mausoleum had been postponed indefinitely due to budget cuts. I'm driving back to Des Moines tomorrow to check on the book, just to be safe. Tonight, I stopped at my local grocery store for supplies for the trip. As I waited in the checkout line, I casually observed the employees going about their jobs, scanning items, bagging groceries, checking inventory. All following procedures they didn't create, wearing uniforms that erased their individuality, part of a hierarchy they'd likely never reach the top of. The cashier smiled as she scanned my items. "Do you have our rewards card?" "No," I replied. "Would you like to apply? It takes just a minute, and you can save up to 5% on future purchases." I started to decline, but something in her eyes caught my attention. A hint of desperation beneath the corporate-mandated cheerfulness. Hitting her metrics, following her rules. "Sure," I heard myself say. "Why not?" As she handed me the application form, I noticed her name badge hanging from a silver chain. A small detail, probably meaningless, but my hand trembled slightly as I filled out the form, providing my name, address, phone number, willing service. On the drive home, I passed a new development at the edge of town. The billboard advertised, "Coming soon, Costco wholesale." I nearly drove off the road. That night, I woke at exactly 3:17 a.m. to the sound of 3 precise knocks on my bedroom door. I lay frozen, heart hammering against my ribs, knowing I should ignore it but unable to stop myself from listening for a 4th knock, or a 5th. After an eternity of silence, curiosity overcame fear. I crept to the door and eased it open. The hallway was empty, but a small rectangular object lay on the floor, a Costco employee badge on a silver chain. The name field was blank, but the position title sent ice through my veins. Regional Manager of Special Operations. The barcode began with 7 zeros. I'm writing this now as I pack my car, preparing to warn the others. We thought we had contained it, but we were wrong. The collector doesn't need the book anymore. It found a new binding, a new vessel, the very structure of modern commerce itself. The rules have changed, and God help us all. We follow them willingly.